E nā makamaka, e he mane o ko, o iolani ko o inoa. Hello everybody. For the purposes of this little review, my name is Iolani, and I have, in addition to moving forward, I have been going all the way back to the beginning to review. And I started with pronunciation, and I have begun to look at the basic building blocks for building rocks for building a foundation of speech. And so this is the second in that. And I find it really helpful as you move forward to also go back and review what you have been taught and try to explain it, because if you can explain it, well, then it deepens your understanding. So I'm going to simply read some of what I have created for my review. We began to look at the building rocks for building a foundation for speech. We discussed that there are different types of kaʻi and memeʻa and focused on introducing the following. Kaʻi type he and memeʻa type kikino. Wana nā mākou e kia ninau e a me kēia pane. Ninau he aha kēia pane he. And then you fill in the blank. So basically what we did is we took two very simple components, and from these very simple things we were able to create a question and an answer. E noʻonoʻo niele o ko, he aha ke ano o ka hua o lelo aha. E a imi no kona ano ma ka puke vehe vehe o lelo. E nana ia ma kahi wā he ae. Be curious about what aha means. Like we looked at what he is and we looked at kēia, but we didn't discuss aha. So dare to look things up in the dictionary, and we'll look at this later. Following are some ki'i from my curiosity practices last week, observing what I did not know the names of readily. I introduced our first, and it introduces our first type of kāhulu, a kāhulu memeʻa, which is to say when something follows a word, it acts as a descriptor. In other languages, one puts this describing word in relation to what you are describing in different places. Before as opposed to after. Excuse me as I edit as I go along. He pua nani kēia. This is a pretty flower. So in Hawaiian, the nani comes after what you're describing. He nani, he pua nani kēia. In French, c'est une jolie fleur. Jolie, which is the word for pretty in French, that comes before. And it's also the same way in English. The describing word goes before. This is a pretty flower. So I made some pretty ki'i. So to review, kāhulu is comes from Kamana Wilson's work, and it's the word that they use for the descriptor word that comes behind a word. You have the base word plus the descriptive word, and the thing that's underlined is what we call the kāhulu memeʻa. Can you say that? Kāhulu memeʻa. One more time, kāhulu memeʻa. Nani. So he aha kēia. He pine kaulaʻi. And kaulaʻi means to hang up, to dry in the sun. Pine, I think, comes from English, and that means pin. So what we're saying here when we're asking he aha kēia, what is this? We're saying it is a hanging up pin. He pine kaulaʻi. Can you say that with me? He aha kēia. He pine kaulaʻi. He aha kēia. He mau pine kaulaʻi. He kaulaʻi kaulaʻi lole. So I asked, what is this? And I said, he mau pine kaulaʻi. So if we wanted to have plural with this particular form, we would insert the word mau before the plural things that we're describing. So when I say he mau pine kaulaʻi, it's like I'm saying there are some clothespins. He kaula kaulaʻi lole, So kaʻa becomes what we're describing. So this is the kaʻa. This is sort of the string or the line. And what type of line is it? Kaula'i lole. And kaula'i, if we go back to hang up and dry something, so it is and lole is clothing, so it's a clothesline. So let's do that together. You ready? He aha kēia, he maupini kaula'i, he kaula kaula'i lole. Inai maki maki ke kanaka I haʻi ka helu nui o kahi mea, e kau I ka hua o lelo ma mua o ka hua o lelo ano kikino. In this form, as we've said before, if something is plural, we'll use mau to express the plural of something. In other language forms, this changes. We will look at later. So I'm going to just go ahead and put that now in this form. Hay form. I'm just going to put a hay flow. But then also there's another one, na. So let's just be curious about that. What is that? When do we use na? Oops, let me make this bigger actually. When would we use na? So when you're curious, that's part of the alchemy of learning. If you just begin to be curious and ask yourself questions and the answers somehow flow to you. All right, he aha kēia. He ho'ailona ho'oku. Ho'ailona is sign, and ho'oku means to make stopped. Ho'oku. So let's do this together. You ready? Makaukau. He aha kēia. He ho'ailona. He ho'ailona ho'oku. He aha kēia. He ho'ailona ho'oku. I bet you're pronouncing that beautifully. He aha kēia. He kukui ho'oku. So can you guess which in this here means light? Very good, kukui, because remember the description comes after. He kukui ho'oku. He aha kēia. Guess where that question came from? You're right. He pepa haleu. So can you describe? Do you know which word might be paper? Correct. It would be the one that comes before the descriptor, because in Hawaiian, remember, the descripting word comes after this little content word, which is known as a kikino in this context, or a noun. He pepa haleu. And there is the description of it. So let's go back to this. What is the word aha? In English, it is called an interrogative. I call it a hua ni nao, a question word. And I made up this fun little graphic from Canva with a list of the interrogatives. Aha, what, why, and we have done the first one. We understand that now. He aha kēia. He, we just look at that. So we could look at some of these things here, like here, what's this right here? He aha kēia. He la'au niu, that would be a palm tree. He aha kēia. He pāpale, it's a hat. He aha kēia. He pua. He aha kēia. He makaani la, sunglasses. He aha kēia. He pū. He aha kēia. Oh, I don't know the word for crab. So let us do this where we are going to go to vehe viki so I can show you how this works. And we can look up the word crab. It's a general name. There's a lot of different words for crab. Tons of them. But we'll just call it a papa'i. He aha kēia. Papa'i. And then what I could do for myself here, I'm going to make a note to myself, is to make a note of the words that I don't know. Like, how do you say popsicle? That looks like a popsicle. And so I'm going to put here, popsicle. So how is ice? Maybe how ono, tasty ice maybe. And how do you say starfish? I'm going to put that there too for my own personal review. All right. So then to review once again of continuing on with the elements, we began to look at kaʻi, and we learned that it was originally called an indefinite article he, and that was explained in Pukui and Albert, and then also they call it an indefinite article in Kaleha Aheo. And then later it's called a kaʻi in Nakai Abalu and also the Sam Noʻeau Warner Guidelines. We learned that there are different types of content words, which are called memeʻa, and we began with introducing nouns, which is called a kikino. Tidy this up. So he is just one of many, and kikino is one of 4 different types of memeʻa that are content words. We learned that there are different types of content words and began with introducing nouns coined more recently as kikino. The kaʻi is something that goes in front of the noun kikino to create meaning. A kaʻi before a word that in context acts as a kikino. Remember, words can have multiple ways of being used as well as layers of meaning. We did that in the first lesson of this review. Will tell you that something belongs to a class of general things. I like the way Kumukaliko expresses it. Something is a something. We have looked at these 2 language elements and created meaning by asking a question and responding. He ha kēia. He, fill in the blank. But these elements are also used in crafting simple noun sentences that relate to non-specific things called aikehe. Last year, actually, I think it might have been 2 years ago, I wrote a paper about aikehe, and I put it on my website under my aikehe section, and I will put that link in the bottom, and then I wrote a whole 8-page paper about it. And then in this paper, I looked at all of the different ways that, all the different perspectives of how aikehe is explained, because I find that when you look at all the different ways, then it's somehow, for me, it makes it a lot easier to kind of comprehend the sentence. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to put in insert link. Good. All right. So now, actually, the main part of this lesson, all this to review and build on a little bit, the main part of the lesson for today, or the review, is to look at this word for this, kēia. And in English, it is kēia. And I really, really like the way that she explains it in Kaleha Aheo. In English, we have one word for this, and we have one word for that. But in Hawaiian, we have one word for this, kēia, but we have 2 words for that, kēlā, kēna. Hea hake ano kēlā me kēna. What's the nature of kēlā together with kēna? This and that. All right, so in the English perspective, this, it's the stuff in the speaker's personal space, like stuff you could reach out and you could touch maybe. That is the stuff outside of your personal space. And I love these little ki'i I made, this and that in the Hawaiian perspective. Kēia is this in my space. Kēlā is stuff outside of personal space. Like if, say, I'm looking at the garden and I'm pointing at, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. Hela kēlā ma'o, so I'm saying, what is that over there? And he mala pua kēlā, It's my flower garden. Now, kēna is if it's in your space, if it's in someone else's space, not your own, that is a part of the conversation. Like say, for instance, I think I made some examples, so I'm not going to try to explain it. Here we go. If you are talking to the woman, hope you could have seen those. If you're talking to the woman in the field, like say you're not within arm length of the woman, it's not in your personal space, but it's her personal space. This is you to the person, kēlā kēna. And so you're asking her, what is that in your personal space? And she says, he lio lo'ihi. We're reviewing. Do you remember what this is called? Very good. It's kāhulu memeʻa. Lo'ihi means tall, and it's describing the horse. He lio lo'ihi. If you're pointing to something outside of your personal space and you ask, what is that? The thing is not in your personal space. So I'm asking, we're together, perhaps side by side, and I'm seeing these little monkeys hanging upside down. And I say to the person next to me, hey, la kēlā, what's that over there? And then you respond, hey, mau keiki. Do you remember why it's mau? That's because there's more than one keiki. Hey, mau keiki. And so that is my review for today. And I am going to stop this recording and move forward. Hoi mua. E hoi mua. E hoi mua kako. Let's all of us together paddle forward.